Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. After 30 years of marriage, Monday evening found me at the kitchen table with my wonderful wife, Katrina, though I affectionately call her Katie. She was preparing a classic dish that filled the air with a mouth-watering aroma. The pan sizzled, and, as if by magic, she managed to bring the cauliflower cheese to a delightful golden brown crust. It was just the way I love it, crispy and delicious. As a side dish, she served the leftover roast beef from the previous night, accompanied by a few tangy pickles. To top it all off, she surprised me with a pint of my favorite beer. I figured it was perfectly acceptable to treat myself to a strong beer on a weekday evening. After all, it's a small pleasure in the grand scheme of life. But having known Katie for 35 years, I could sense a shift in the air. Something was brewing, and I had a hunch I wouldn't be too pleased about it. Then came the revelation. "I'm going out for dinner on Friday evening with one of the guys from work," she casually announced. My heart sank for a moment. But before you jump to conclusions, let me clarify. It's just dinner. No romantic involvement or secret affairs, so let's put that idea to rest right now. Still, I wasn't expecting this turn of events, and it left me feeling a mix of surprise and unease. Although I maintained a calm exterior, inside, a whirlwind of emotions was raging. I yearned for a spark, excitement, something to break the monotony that had settled into our lives. I could almost hear the ticking clock, counting down to the moment when I would have to confront the reality of my own desires. I felt the grip of routine tightening, and I wondered where this new path might lead both of us. So, now I'm to blame for things becoming a bit dull? Funny, but you didn't seem to think that when I took you out for dinner and dancing last Saturday, or when we celebrated our quiz night win at the pub with a bottle of champagne on Friday. You were practically glowing with excitement that night. That was us living life to the fullest. And now, I want something for myself, and believe me, it has nothing to do with intimacy. It's just dinner. And who is this man, and when did you decide to start this little adventure? His name is Ronald. He's been persistent for months, but I kept saying no. Tonight he asked again and swore it's just a casual dinner. No intimacy, he promised, and I reluctantly agreed. Ronald, the new guy she mentioned a few months ago and then suddenly stopped talking about. I remember dropping by her office once when she forgot her lunch, and there he was. You know that feeling when you instantly dislike someone who's just too charming? That was my first impression of him, and our encounters in town did nothing to change my opinion. I don't like that you're going, but it's your decision. But know that I'm raising a red flag. I don't trust him, and I'm skeptical of this whole no-strings-attached situation. Remember, I've seen him. The next 2 days felt like a deep freeze had settled over the house. When she came home later than usual on Wednesday, she had a grocery bag in her hand. It wasn't just any bag. 2 extra handles were peeking out, hinting at something hidden inside. Quickly stuffing one bag into the other, she made a move that sent a chill down my spine. While she prepared dinner, I slipped out to take a shower, curiosity raging in my mind. In a moment of temptation, I peeked into the far corner of her closet. My heart raced when I noticed another bag. Inside it was a stunning satin blue dress and a brand new pair of stockings. I was desperately tempted to take it out and unravel the mystery, but I knew that would reveal my secret discovery. And what if it was a surprise for me? The thought gnawed at me, but skepticism still crept in. Thursday dawned, and I continued with my usual routine. But as soon as I stepped outside, I called in sick to work. I had a mission. The night was bitterly cold, and I was bracing myself for what was to come. She mentioned she would leave early on Friday morning, which meant that by the time I got home after my shift, she would likely already be gone. It hit me. She was probably planning to slip into that seductive dress without me knowing. This was a twist I certainly hadn't expected. The speech was supposed to be delivered earlier than expected, and the tension in the air was palpable. "So, where are you heading for your date?" I asked sharply. "I'm not telling you. You'll just show up and ruin everything," she replied, defiance dancing in her eyes. But I couldn't let it go. "You need to think about what you're doing. Going on a date with another man while you're still married to me, and you don't even want to tell me where you're going? That's unacceptable. With firm resolve, I added, if you leave, I'll make sure you end up on the street. Her expression shifted to one of disbelief. You wouldn't do that. You love me, she countered, her voice tinged with desperation. I love you, I admitted, but do you really want to test that love? She lowered her gaze, visibly tense under the weight of my words. I think your company has a morality policy, right? She asked, a hint of disdain creeping back into her tone. I'll be sure to find out, I replied evenly. But maybe you don't realize that you don't need to take this risk. But I could get fired, she exclaimed, panic evident in her voice. Are you really willing to risk everything? I concluded with finality. I don't expect to be here when you get back if you go on that date with him. Whether or not you end up in bed with him doesn't matter. I saw how my words impacted her. She understood now. The nights were growing colder, the distance between us wider. I started leaving for work earlier, desperately trying to avoid morning confrontations, but always came home sooner than expected. Tonight was no exception. I returned, ready to face whatever awaited me. The car was parked on the street, silently guarding the secrets within. I slipped into the house, wrapped in silence, and waited in the shadows for 15 long minutes after the relentless rain had finally stopped. Eventually, I went upstairs to our bedroom. There she stood, like a vision, in a satin dress that clung to her curves, exuding a charm that took my breath away. So this is why you're leaving so early, I thought. You're hiding this stunning outfit from me. I picked up the discarded stocking package lying on the bed and saw a blush of embarrassment cross her cheeks. So, you didn't plan on sleeping with him, but you're going out dressed like a total seductress. I fought the urge to say something harsher, knowing it might push her away. I still held on to the hope that I could reach her before she slipped out the door. I remembered our evenings at the restaurant, where I would dress in my own blouse, skirt, and tights. No stockings, but Ronald bought those for me. And now, here she is, in a dress that could turn heads. Who paid for this? I asked, feeling the tension rising in my voice. I did, she replied casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. With money from our joint account? I asked. Yes, she answered, and there it was, the confirmation that stung. So I paid for this. You used my money. Why are you even seeing him? I asked, disappointment simmering deep inside. I want something real, something exciting. At that moment, the doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. I headed down the stairs, and she followed behind like a shadow. Ronald had arrived, and the look of surprise on his face was almost comical. The atmosphere was thick with uncertainty, and I decided it was time to lay everything on the line. Here's the deal. If you walk out that door, it's over between us. There's no going back. That won't work, she replied defiantly. You love me. Ronald, with calm confidence, extended his hand to her. Katie, it's time to make a choice. His words hung in the air, and suddenly the weight of the moment seemed unbearable to her. Taking a deep breath, she stepped onto the porch, leaving me standing in the doorway. I squeezed past them, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Katrina, I called out, and she turned to face me. From my back pocket, I pulled out the envelope containing the divorce papers, the wedding ring glinting in the light. I slid the ring inside, sealed the envelope, and held it out to her. But she didn't take it. Ronald's hand was still hovering in the air, and I firmly placed the envelope in his palm. I looked up at him and spoke in a steady voice. When you're done with your little escapade, make sure she gets this. And just like that, the air filled with the crackling tension of unspoken words and unresolved emotions as the door closed behind them. As I approached the house, I saw the for sale sign hanging like a ghost of my past, a reminder of the decision I had made. I tore it from its place and pinned it to the post by the fence, a symbolic act of severing ties. Katrina froze in the doorway, her face a picture of shock, her mouth agape as if trying to grasp the reality unfolding before her. I rushed past her, my heart pounding with adrenaline and resolve, and headed inside to pack my things. I slung a backpack over my shoulder and dragged a large suitcase behind me, feeling the weight of my decision with every step. Tossing my belongings into the back seat of my car, I turned to face Katrina and spoke in a calm but firm voice. "I'll be back tomorrow to collect the rest of my things. Just make sure he's not in the house," I said, gesturing toward Ronald. As my words sank in, Katrina collapsed to the floor, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Now you can date and sleep with whoever you want," she sobbed, her voice filled with anguish. Ronald, ever the provocateur, smirked and shoved me aside. "Oh, how sweet," he mocked, clearly reveling in the chaos. But I couldn't let his smug behavior go unchallenged. I was grateful for the cameras capturing every moment, immortalizing Ronald's arrogance for all to see. With a swift motion, I stepped forward and drove my knee into his gut with all the force I could muster. He crumpled to the floor, gasping for air in shock and humiliation, while Katrina lay on the ground, tears glistening in her eyes as she looked at me with a mix of fear and admiration. "Don't mess with me," I warned, my voice low and fierce. "See you tomorrow," I added, before walking out, leaving the chaos behind me. I drove to my parents' house where they awaited my arrival with open arms. It was Saturday, and I returned to the scene, determined to reclaim the remnants of my life. Ronald was nowhere to be found, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. Her voice was desperate as she pleaded with me to reconsider. But I couldn't shake the feeling that when she goes out in such attire with her colleagues, it's a blatant sign of her disregard for our relationship. I saw the cracks forming and refused to watch her lose herself in a world where I no longer existed. I wasn't going to stay in the background. I am going to take everything from her. I've spent 30 years on this cheater, and I won't tolerate these antics any longer. With a heavy heart and newfound determination, I packed my things and left, ready to start a new chapter in my life, resolute in leaving the past behind. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Tonight, I decided to invite a friend over for dinner. Over breakfast, my wife Gloria, who has been by my side for 24 years, casually dropped the news. "We met at the gym, and I'll be spending quite a bit of time with him," she said with a hint of excitement in her voice. "I want you to meet him. After all, we don't have any secrets between us, right?" Curiosity got the better of me, and I couldn't help but ask, "So, you two will be working out together?" Her response was playful, yet there was an undertone to it that I didn't expect. "In a way, yes, it might be quite physical." My heart started racing as I began to connect the dots. "It sounds like you want to be close with this guy," I said, trying to mask the surprise in my tone. "Is that right?" she replied, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. Gloria took a deep breath, her expression turning serious. "I've realized something important. As deeply as I love you, and I do love you, I've come to understand that I need more than just one man in my life. For 20 years, I've been a devoted wife, but lately, I've felt an emptiness gnawing at me. Then I met Matthew, and he filled that void in a way I never expected. I believe he's my soulmate." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I couldn't help but marvel at the idea. Wow, I didn't know someone could have more than one soulmate. Does that mean I've been left in the past? "No, silly," she replied, her eyes softening. "You were the first in my life, and you'll always be my main soulmate." The conversation left me confused, yet intrigued. Life was taking a turn I hadn't anticipated, and I felt both anxious and curious about what lay ahead. "I want to be completely honest with you, and I hope you'll appreciate my candor. I invited him over for your benefit. I truly hope you'll see the same wonderful qualities in him that I do, and that a friendship might blossom between you. That way, I won't feel like I'm hiding something." But honestly, I wasn't sure how to react. I tried my best, but nothing came to mind. As far as I knew, she had never been wrong before. With a heavy heart, I slipped out of the house and headed to work, feeling the weight of uncertainty. She had that self-satisfied look on her face, as if she had unlocked the secret to a blissful life. I couldn't shake the nagging thought of whether I'd be having dinner at home that evening. The workload that day was light, allowing me time to ponder how I might disrupt her plans. By the time I returned home, the familiar aroma of a special dinner filled the air, wrapping around me like comforting arms. Gloria, hearing my arrival, called out from our bedroom, "Dinner's almost ready. I'll be down in a minute." Her voice was cheerful, but I could sense the tension simmering beneath it. Matthew's arrival was imminent, and the anticipation hung in the air. "Get him a drink and make him feel at home," Gloria called, a hint of excitement in her voice. Just as I spoke, the door swung open, and Matthew walked in, without knocking, without ringing the bell, just easily, as if he owned the place. "Hey, Mark, I'm Matthew," he announced, extending his hand, a smug smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I appreciate you sharing your wife with me." I let his hand hang in the air, sizing him up. He was young, fit, and undeniably handsome, but there was nothing about him that made me feel threatened. "Gloria will be down soon," I replied coolly. "She asked me to offer you a drink." "Scotch neat would be great," he replied, his confidence unwavering. So he was a man of taste. It was nice to know he appreciated a fine single malt as much as I did. It hit me. He had been here before, enjoying not just the whiskey, but possibly my wife's company as well. "Well, the bar's over there," I said, pointing to the drinks. "Help yourself, and then join me. We can get to know each other better." He didn't hesitate as he approached the bar, skillfully selected a bottle of top-notch liqueur, and poured himself a generous glass. Once he settled into the seat opposite me, I attempted to break the ice. "So, Gloria mentioned you two met at the gym?" I asked, curious about what had brought him here tonight. I sank into my favorite chair, fully aware that if I hadn't claimed it first, someone else would have snapped it up without a second thought. "So, did she turn on the charm right away? Or did she play coy before drawing you in?" I inquired, intrigued by the flicker of confusion in his eyes. He shrugged, a slight smile playing on his lips. "We met for coffee a few times, and there was an undeniable spark between us," he replied, with a hint of nostalgia in his voice. "And then, well, one thing led to another." I raised an eyebrow, pleasantly surprised. When she casually mentioned inviting someone over for dinner, I expected it to be Paul. Seeing Matthew sitting across from me was a delightful twist. "Paul? No way," he said, trying to mask his curiosity. "I'm Matthew," he confirmed, as if that should explain everything. Maybe Paul was scared off by whatever she had planned for him. "I ran into him at the doctor's last week, and he looked like he'd seen a ghost." Matthew shifted uncomfortably and took a large sip of whiskey, a flush creeping onto his cheeks. At that moment, the atmosphere changed abruptly as Gloria descended the stairs in a dazzling red dress. Her hair cascaded over her shoulders in perfect waves, and her makeup was flawless. She exuded an aura that could light up the entire room, and it was impossible not to be captivated. "I see you've already met," she said, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Honestly, she looked like the cat that got the canary. "Oh yes," I replied, my tone light and playful. "I was just telling Matthew that I bumped into Paul at the doctor's office last week. He was whining about the social disease you gave him." I said it with such cheerfulness, as if it were the most ordinary topic in the world. "What?" she hissed, narrowing her eyes. "What are you talking about? Who the hell is Paul? I've never given anyone anything." I smirked. "Come on, you told me all about Matthew, didn't you? Surely you've shared some of your other victories as well," I teased. I was surprised to see Paul instead of Matthew today. I thought maybe the pain had scared Paul away, but let me tell you, that arrogant jerk waltzed into my home as if he owned the place. "Wait, did you actually give him a key?" Matthew asked, looking puzzled. "Don't listen to him," she interjected, shooting me a reproachful glance. "He's just messing with you. There's no Paul, no disease, and certainly no one else. Well, except for Mark. Her gaze lingered on me, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. But can we be sure of that? I turned to Matthew, my voice steady but edged with sharpness. Let's put this in perspective. If my devoted wife can throw away our vows and betray me with some muscle-bound fool from the gym, what makes you think she wouldn't do the same with some random guy like you? And if she hasn't already done her research around town, what's stopping her from doing it now? A cheater is a cheater, no matter how you spin it. Their reactions were priceless. Matthew's expression was a mix of disbelief and shock, while my wife's face was flushed with rage. She told me you were the one sleeping with her without protection, I continued, my tone dripping with disdain. Here's a tip. When you're with her, you might want to double up on protection. Just a thought. And now goodbye, dear. Neither of them knew that the conversation had been recorded. Now they're in for my sweet revenge. I'll send this recording not only to our kids, but also release it into the wilds of the internet, with the headline featuring the cheater's photo. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.